The morning Marcus Delroy pulled into the Hargrove Motors charity auction with his 14-year-old daughter Zoe sitting quietly in the passenger seat. Every head in that lot turned, and not a single one turned with respect. The car he drove was a 1973 Chevrolet Nova, sun-bleached to a color that could only be described as forgotten, its body riddled with rust patches the size of dinner plates, its front bumper held on by a single bolt and what appeared to be the quiet stubbornness of a man who had nothing left to prove but everything left to lose. People stared. A few laughed under their breath. And from across the gleaming lot, standing beside a row of pristine luxury vehicles donated by the city's wealthiest residents, a woman in a white blazer looked up from her champagne glass and laughed, not quietly, not politely, but fully and openly, the kind of laugh that fills the air and hangs there long after the sound is gone. That woman was Vivian Hargrove. 44 years old. Net worth just north of $800 million. CEO of Hargrove Auto Group, a woman who had built an empire from her father's single dealership and had never once, in her career or her life, been told she was wrong about a car. She was wrong about this one. Before we go further, if you believe in second chances, in the quiet dignity of people who build beautiful things in the dark, please take a moment right now to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to this channel, Echoes of Stories, because every story we tell here is for the person who almost gave up. Now let's go back to Marcus. Marcus Delroy was 39 years old, and he looked every single year of it, plus a few borrowed from grief. He had been a mechanical engineer once, the real kind, the kind who graduated top of his class at a state university nobody had heard of and earned everything he had through nights studying under a single desk lamp while his roommates slept. He had worked for a mid-sized automotive company in Ohio for 11 years, designing combustion systems that quietly made their way into vehicles sold across the country, his name appearing in zero headlines and on dozens of internal patents that belonged to the company, not to him. He had been good at his work. He had been invisible at it. When the company downsized, Marcus was among the first to go. Not because of performance. Because of politics. Because of a manager who felt threatened by a quiet man who never raised his voice but always had the right answer. He took the severance, packed his desk, and drove home to tell his wife Renata. That was the same week Renata told him she was leaving. Not because of the job. She said she had been unhappy for years. She said this calmly, as though she had rehearsed it, which Marcus later understood she had. She took most of what was in their account, which wasn't much, and left him with Zoe, who was 11 at the time, and a house with 4 months left on a lease he could no longer afford. He moved them into a 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of Cloverfield, the kind of neighborhood where the corner store clerk knew your name because you came in to buy the cheapest brand of everything. Marcus took a job at a local repair shop for $14 an hour. He did not complain about it. He fixed other people's cars by day and came home to Zoe by evening, and somewhere in the space between those two things, he found a reason to keep going. Zoe was bright and funny and had her mother's eyes and her father's refusal to quit anything halfway. She deserved more than a man who had stopped dreaming. So Marcus did not stop dreaming. He just learned to dream quietly, in a garage. The Nova had cost him $300 from an estate sale 18 months ago. The previous owner had left behind a barn full of old parts and the skeleton of a car that looked like it had lost every fight it had ever been in. Everyone who saw it told Marcus to leave it. His neighbor Raymond called it a crime against motor vehicles. His coworker told him he was wasting whatever little money he had left on a machine that would never run again. Marcus thanked them for their concern and dragged the car home on a borrowed trailer and began to work. He worked on it at night, after Zoe was in bed. He worked on weekends, with Zoe sitting in a lawn chair beside him, doing her homework and occasionally handing him tools she had learned to identify by name. He sourced parts from salvage yards and online auctions and from 3 different mechanics who thought he was building a show car for fun. He was not building it for fun. He was building it because he had an idea, a real one, the kind that lived in the part of the brain where the smartest and most stubborn pieces of a person coexist, an idea about a modified small-block engine with a redesigned fuel delivery system that could produce performance numbers that had no business coming from a car that looked like this one. He had been testing versions of this concept on paper since his engineering days. The Nova was where the paper became real. By the time the Hargrove charity auction came around, the outside of the car was untouched. Marcus had decided early on not to spend $1 on cosmetics. Every cent went under the hood. Zoe had been the one to find the auction listing online and had circled it in red marker on the kitchen calendar without saying anything. Marcus saw it one morning and understood. The auction featured a community vehicle showcase open to any registered resident. First prize was a $50,000 grant to the winner's chosen local cause. Marcus had chosen Zoe's school, which had lost its science lab funding 2 years ago. When he pulled the Nova into the lot that morning, he felt the stares and let them pass over him the way cold air passes over something that has already made up its mind. He walked Zoe to a seat near the refreshment table, told her to stay close, and went to register the vehicle. That was when Vivian Hargrove walked past, glanced at the Nova, and laughed her full, open, echoing laugh. She said something to the associate beside her. Marcus did not hear the words but saw the gesture, a dismissive wave of the hand in the direction of his car, the universal language of someone who had already decided. Marcus said nothing. He registered the car, received his placard, and waited. The showcase began at 11. Each vehicle was started and allowed to run while a panel of judges and attendees observed. The luxury donations went first, pristine restorations, limited editions, vehicles that gleamed under the morning sun like they had been dreaming of this moment. The applause was generous. The champagne glasses tilted approvingly. Then came the Nova. Marcus started the engine. What happened next was something that everyone who was there would describe slightly differently afterward, because none of them had a frame of reference large enough to hold it. The sound that came out of that car was not the sound of a $300 junk vehicle. It was not the sound of anything they had heard before, not quite. It was deep and controlled and precise, with a note underneath it that seemed almost mathematical, a sound that vibrated in the sternum and made the air feel briefly alive. The judges looked at their instruments and then looked at each other. One of them walked around to the hood and stood there for a long moment before asking Marcus, quietly, if he would open it. The engine inside was not what anyone expected. It was not a rebuilt stock engine. It was not a commercial upgrade. It was something that Marcus Delroy had designed and machined himself over the course of 14 months of nights and weekends, a system so elegantly constructed that one of the judges, a veteran automotive engineer from a well-known testing firm, would later say it looked less like something built in a home garage and more like something that belonged in a research lab. The fuel delivery redesign alone showed performance efficiency gains that the judge would spend the next week trying to verify, and then verifying again, because he did not trust his own instruments the first time. Vivian Hargrove stood at the edge of the crowd and looked at the engine for a long time without speaking. Then she walked over to Marcus. Her expression had changed entirely, the casual authority had been replaced by something more honest and less comfortable. She asked him where he had trained. He told her. She asked him who he had worked with. He told her that too. Then she was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again her voice was quieter than it had been all morning. She asked him what he needed. Marcus looked over at Zoe, who was standing at the edge of the crowd with her hands pressed together and her eyes wide and wet. He looked back at Vivian and told her that his daughter's school had lost its science lab. He told her the students there were exactly the kind of kids who deserved to grow up knowing how things worked. That was all he said. The Nova won the grant. Every dollar went to Cloverfield Middle School. The science lab opened 4 months later. On the day of the opening, Zoe stood in the middle of the room with a look on her face that her father would carry with him for the rest of his life, the look of a child who understood, for the first time and completely, that her father had never stopped fighting for her, not even once, not even in the dark. If this story moved something in you, if you saw yourself in Marcus, or in Zoe, or in the quiet dignity of someone who kept building when the world kept laughing, Please leave a comment below telling us what part of this story hit you the hardest. Your words matter more than you know. Before we close, drop a comment that says, "The engine was always there," if you believe the most powerful things in life are often hidden beneath the surface. Some people will never be seen for what they truly carry inside them, not until they start the engine. Marcus Delroy was not bitter about the laughter. He was not broken by the years of invisible work or the severance check or the empty half of the bed or the $14 hourly wage. He was, in the end, exactly what he had always been, a man who understood that the outside of a thing means nothing. That what matters is what you build in the quiet, and whether you keep building when no one is watching, and whether the person sitting in the lawn chair beside you holding your tools grows up knowing that love, real love, looks like a father who never stopped.